She said she kind of missing the turtleneck. What's up? What's up? What's good?
Hey, how you
Hey,
doing?
I'm just over here getting my jam on. You know what I'm saying? Let me see.
Listen, you're so cool. Thank you so much. That was so thoughtful of you. I know you always, have some music going to get you in that space.
Yes, yes, you got to. So yeah, of course, it's only right that I pull up
Super.
with you jamming.
I feel like this is like, your setup is good. Let me get this. Is this okay?
Oh yeah, you
That's all
good?
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Are you a musician as well, Achille?
I guess technically, I played trumpet, baritone, mellophone, and French horn in the band.
In the band?
In the
Which
band, yeah.
band?
No,
Whose
just
band?
in band in high
Oh,
school.
in oh,
Hmm.
wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So do you still pick up your horns? I imagine
I
so.
want one. I've been threatening. I think I've gotten too many things for my birthday already, but
I
I've been
see
threatening to purchase a
that
trumpet
that's
again because I
next.
want to play.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very healing, and I guess I'm sure. So you would do trumpet. You would start with trumpet.
Yeah, I would go back to
That's
trumpet
your
definitely.
primary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a guitar over here in the corner. I tried to teach myself to play,
Yeah.
but now it's
Yeah.
like just this beautiful prop
I
that
see. You're like, yes, I have. This is my library and my guitar.
and my guitar. How
I
you
know I
doing?
have a guitar to my right as well, but
Oh,
I'm a guitar student. I It's not like it's not something I'm really fluid with, but I do love it.
mm-hmm.
Makes me happy.
Yeah, I got to the tuning stage, and it all fell apart after that. Like when I
Yeah,
was learning how to tune it, and it was just a wrap.
I feel like I can imagine. Are you an educator? I know
Uh-huh.
I'm asking a lot of questions. So I
No,
imagine
no, I'm cool.
there'll be a season where you have a sabbatical and maybe the guitar will go. I imagine that like I think that, I started my guitar lessons actually in 2020.
Yeah.
And you have to have a zone of grace around anything you started in 2020.
Yes, absolutely.
So there'll be, I guess a time when I can imagine a little more stability for us when we can slowly take up a new instrument like that. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, oh man, I was reading the comments and I was laughing at Afro Book Requa. She said
I
Achilles is a
didn't
damn
read.
Achilles is a damn
I
musician too.
Indeed, I know. See, I always ask, and
Yeah.
yes, and I'm sure you have your questions as an I'm an educator too. I feel I am. I mean, I am. Um, and I'm not like on a faculty, but I do work with different student groups, and I do a lot of educational programs. Um,
Yeah.
all the time. And I always ask the students in the room, I start with three instruments and I make them, because usually they think that they're there to like listen to me as the master artist. And I start with how many people play three instruments? And so you would have
Yeah.
given me a hand. And then I say two, and then I say one. And, it's like three-fourths of the rooms students have either they play in church or they, they're teaching themselves something, and I want everybody to be a part of the conversation. So, you know,
Yeah.
I also go on instinct, and I just knew that you play something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, you were very like tuned into the music in a way, so I knew that you probably love music.
Yeah. Yeah. I was telling Reggie, my co-host, Reggie Reeds. Well, first
Yes. Shout
let me
out to
go
Reggie
ahead and
Reeds.
let me introduce you, right?
Okay.
Before we just go ahead and get into the conversation because we good. I see it's gonna
True.
flow back and forward.
Right. Right.
For how do you pronounce your last name? Hoyes? Hold on, I'm losing you a little bit.
Oh, it zipped out.
There we go. We
Boys.
good now. Hoyes.
Okay.
Okay. So this
Mhm.
is Candice Hoyes, um, a 2020 winner of the inaugural NYC Women's Fund for Film, Music, and Media. She has recently been commissioned by the National Black Theater and Michelle Obama's When We All Vote to co-create a new work to empower Black voters leading into the U.S. presidential election. Fire, fire. And right now you're on tour for your latest release, which is Waiting for the World, right? And then you have the cool parentheses tired because it's an ode to Langston Hughes's poem of the same name, right? We ain't gonna go there yet, right? That's just where we, that's where we're starting off. Let me get my
This is
let me see.
already like one of the best interviews I've ever had.
Ah, I don't know what my phone is doing.
I'll
Oh my
explain to you
God.
why I say that. I just have to interject.
My phone is doing something weird. I can't get it to stop. I think okay, now we're good.
It does
Candace,
sound fine though. You're crystal clear.
can you put the link in there for
Sure.
me?
I
And I can
yeah,
pin it?
oh, for sure.
Because my keyboard did something weird when I tried to do
You know something? It's funny. Oh dear, don't do that now. It's
it.
like giving me filters. Why is it doing that? Is yours funny too?
Did yours like do something weird when you tried to put it in there?
Yeah. Oh wait, now yeah, it's okay. Now, oh dear. This is crazy. It is being funny. It
Yeah.
is being funny. It's like okay, let's see. Oh, come on.
I'm gonna try one
I
more
don't want
time.
to I don't want to like frustrate
Mine's
folks listening to
mine's is
me
acting
talk to
crazy
my talk.
too.
Oh
If not,
my.
I can work out something smooth where we can have it rolling,
It says
or I can.
now that you're sending me a request to join and that can't be right. Right? Like, oh, Instagram, what are you doing?
Oh Lord.
This is our month and we only have a few days left. Can you not do this tonight?
If it's gonna act up, what I can do, I can just put it in my link tree, for like a,
Oh, that's
for the rest of
kind
the
of you.
week.
I think let's see if it smooths out. So what we're trying to do is um share something with you by link, everyone. But
Yeah,
everyone's so locked in. Thank you for being here. I don't want to interrupt
yeah.
you though, Akili.
Okay, it's all good.
We'll
I'm
see
gonna
if we
get
can
it.
get this in here.
Yeah, we're gonna get it in there. We're gonna get it in there. My wife might be working it out. I see her on the phone. She might be working it out.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
so I have a few questions. I know I watched a few of your lives, and you usually have some questions too. So if you have any questions, like to go back and forth with what I'm asking you, feel free to like chime in. And anybody that has a question about like some of the topics that we broach, please put it in the question box so that we can get to those as well. Um, but my first question on your page, it says that you are poised to shape the artist cum activist role. Can you talk about what that means and how you're doing that?
Uh, Thank you. Well, that's something that was written of me that I
Hmm.
appreciate because I like the intersection of those things. That's been always a source of inspiration for me. Um, my parents aren't activists, but I did grow up in a family of folks in every generation of my family that I've known personally that is very community centered and in so many different applications, and it's just like it seemed to come natural. It was a reflexive thing. It wasn't even something that we ever questioned. My dad was my Sunday school teacher when I was in fourth grade. My daughter's in fourth grade now, and I kind of have always had such an appreciation for that. And I am an artist. I've felt like an artist since I was very young and started playing piano and learning how to read. And I realized that I was really um, in my stride when I was writing stories. And I started writing stories when I was 7 or 8. And I realized I had a singing voice around 11 or 12. And so I think that just like those things became my modes of expression and quickly a part of how I see myself. So when I do see, and the reason I said that I am enjoying this interview already, and I can tell that this is one of my best interviews that I've had, is because of how thoughtfully you started. You know, beginnings and endings are they're very telling, and
Yeah.
the way that you framed this conversation is very inspiring to me. It lets me see that I'm going to be able to just be my full self. And I think that's really what it means to me. My work, uh, characteristically, it's music that is has one foot in futurity and 1 foot in legacy. And I do love scholarship. I love archives. I love books, and I love ancestral wisdom. My family's from Jamaica, and I've always been interested in the oral folklore and any storytelling. And storytelling is like the main form of when my different generations of my family gather around for a cookout, or celebrate a birthday, or a special day. The night concludes always with music, dancing, and storytelling. And so I can't imagine how that wouldn't fill my music once. There was a time when I was singing other people's music. Um, as a classical musician, I started my career as a classical musician. And even still, I think I was very mindful about the roles that I chose and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
narratives I was telling. Um, Nonetheless, like writing my own stories has been a new frontier. I feel it's like a part of my maturation as an artist is to write and produce my own works.
yeah.
And so that's how that comes together for me. It's like always been, and yet I feel like I'm kind of in my stride now with it.
Yeah, like there's I'm gonna hop around because you talked a little bit about some of the things that I noticed while I was doing I've been doing like, my reconnaissance thing, you know what I'm saying, on
It's kind of
everybody
fun, right?
that's, yeah,
I
on
noticed
everybody that I've
you
had.
truly have, and you really like it. Like you shine is the only way you could say it. These lives, I've been on your lives too, and sometimes I'm like, gee, I haven't like I had to order heavy because I haven't read heavy yet. So I had
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
but I knew I was picking up heavy by a few minutes in.
yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So you mentioned how you were doing, I don't know though, I don't wouldn't call this a cover, but the work that you were doing with the song Single Petals of a Rose, the Ellington song, and the fact that that song doesn't have lyrics, right? And so you had to do the work of like creating those lyrics right out of that song. And I when I was listening to it, it has like this soothing, expansive float to it, and then your voice just kind of comes in, and when your voice comes in, it's not jarring. It's
Hmm.
almost like a part of the it's almost like a part of the instrumentation. And so I wonder what that journey is like when you're breathing life into a classic, right? And hoping, of course, probably to provide some fluidity and something new and fresh as well.
Yeah, that um that was a real um walk on faith because
Yeah.
so to share a little background, the origin of Single Petal of a Rose, I I I had I was at a point about 5 or 6 years ago in my career where I was out of school, I was working as a classical musician, and I was being hired, and I started to notice certain ceiling on what I could do, a
Mm-hmm.
sensation and a constant appeal for me to play roles, kind of uh, situated always in the certain narratives, Porgy and Bess, Showboat,
Mm-hmm.
certain narratives over and over again, and I it produced it was it was disturbing to me. And it's not to say that I reject those works outright, although right now I wouldn't sing those works. I wouldn't sing those works myself. Um I actually for the first time turned it down outright and told the festival this past summer in July they wanted me to sing Summertime, and I said no. And they said, "Why?" And I said, it's just not the way that I want to use my voice at
Yeah.
this moment in the world. It's not, and that's not the narrative of my choice. And so coming back to 5 or 6 years ago when I was able to make that Duke Ellington project called On a Turquoise Cloud, I was looking to do something uh, that took me outside of any particular genre. And jazz, I think, really is a fitting place for me by and large. But there's some people that would find the way that I sing those Ellington selections kind of genre bending because it does have a very
Mm-hmm.
lyrical quality to the voice. That is to say, Ellington wrote those songs that way very intentionally. I found these rare Ellington songs after touring with Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra in 2014, which was a fundamentally like mind-opening experience to be with those musicians for a month on the road and have them pose really challenging questions to me like, why haven't you recorded an album? And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, no one invited me to do that. In classical music, you prepare a role or you perform it hundreds of times. And then if you're sort of anointed by the business, you're offered an opportunity by a producer or some other gatekeeper.
Yeah.
It's a gatekeeping story. This
Yeah.
is all a gatekeeping story. So which we can all relate to no matter what we do. Like, and as soon as I say that, I think everybody just like locks into that part of the story. I know I don't always say it, but it occurs to me that's what this is.
Yeah.
So I left that tour and I started doing my own research. Like, what exactly is my footprint? What am I trying to, what mark am I trying to make? And I went to the Smithsonian and I was just spending time in those archives. I had heard some Ellington songs from the 20s and 30s that use a soprano voice. And by soprano, I mean, most folks know here because this is a book club, so y'all know all kinds of things, but I'll say it anyway. So, soprano is the high female voice. It's the most common voice uh, for women, but it has a really particularly, where the high range of the human voice is.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an extreme soprano, high soprano. So Ellington happened to write some songs from the 20s to the 70s that were just made for soprano voice. And when I read the stories of the women who originally recorded this, like Kay Davis, Ivy Anderson, um, um, the name will come back to me while I'm talking.
Yeah.
Uh, Adelaide Hall was the
Mm.
very first in 1929 to record Creole Love Call. I realized that these are women who maybe hadn't formally trained, and as you think about the period of the 1920s and how displaced Black people were, and you know, in post-Black Reconstruction and Great Migration and all the sorting that we were trying to do with what citizenship meant and like how to live, we weren't necessarily all given access to music educations, although some of us were, and some of us informally were able to really excel in music, like in Ellington, who had like familial support and things. In any case, there were these Black women that were behind the compositions that Ellington wrote these compositions for, who were especially Kay Davis, who was one of the first Black women the very first to graduate Northwestern University in Chicago with a music master's and was an opera singer and like the most lauded in her class. And when I listened to her audio archives, she talks about living in segregated housing and just the challenges of that time. And Ellington came to her campus. And I know as an instrumentalist, you love this part of the story because I love this part. He came to her campus and listened to her senior recital
Yeah.
and
Ah, yeah.
discovered her talent and scooped her up for the band and then
Yeah.
started writing for her voice. And now, Single Petal of a Rose is something that's typically played by a saxophone. Another one that you can find that I recorded is called On a Turquoise Cloud, and that's
That's
done
my.
for
It,
you.
you did
You
the
love that too.
same thing on that. It's like the
That's for a
your
trombone, though. Um,
look. You.
but he did a thing where he said, so Achille, he said, only these people that I choose can record these songs.
Yeah.
So Adelaide Hall was authorized to record Creole Love Call in 29. He didn't, nobody else could perform it
Yeah.
until in the 40s he met young Kay Davis, got her out of school. She toured with those men for 6 years, the only woman
Mm.
in the band. And I just started to have a communing with the ancestors in the archive. I'm not being theatrical because I can't tell you how angry I was by the time I got to this album, frustrated with the gatekeeping and like why I wasn't hired equally often to sing in Italian and French and Spanish as I was to play maids and um, downtrodden characters that I have a lot of esteem for, but I would prefer to see written or in like wholly envisioned by Black composers and not necessarily white directors in a Gershwin score. There's just more possibilities.
Yeah.
There are more layers to these narratives than replaying the very same score all the time. So, in any case, I felt this, I felt seen. I'm holding these
Hmm.
paper manuscripts, pencil, Duke Ellington scores, and seeing that it's the version that's for instruments, and then seeing numbers of churches and numbers of women written into the margins of the thing in pencil, like really with Ellington in spirit, and read about Kay Davis and found out that Kay Davis, toured with them for 6 years, and that he had written this on a turquoise cloud really for her to perform. And it was there was a changing in the genres in jazz. Within jazz, it was moving away from the big band and more into the crooning era when these pieces were written, and so they weren't like the most popular. They're
Yeah.
not like Mood Indigo or Satin Doll or Take the A Train. They're not so easily saleable because they really
Hmm.
challenge the ear in a way, and so they kind of got obscured over time. And by the time I came along in 2014 and 15, no one had recorded this set of things. And I found about 30 or 40 manuscripts. And no person of my age and generation had even taken them up. And part of it is because it's hard enough to make a living, I think, as a singer and a Black singer. And then to sing something that's not really that known or popular is kind of hard to sell. And so when I recorded Single Petal of a Rose to bring it all back, I I was kind of being very vulnerable and tender and taking a lot of chance, and then to change it by adding lyrics is in the spirit of improvisation and
Hmm.
personalization in jazz, and yet kind of commercially risky.
Yeah.
Um, it was very important that the person I was playing with, I pay homage to, is Joe Temperley, who was, uh, he's passed away since I recorded it, but he was so encouraging. He went on Facebook. He's an octogenarian when he recorded it with me. It's his last recording of Single Petal of a Rose, which was his famous signature piece. And he played it, actually, he was a part of Duke Ellington's orchestra. So I had the honor of recording that with someone who was in the orchestra and played
Man.
it with Ellington. And if I had waited until it was more popular, I would have missed the door. It's like a portal. Archives are like a portal, and I think when you walk through them, there comes a timestamp on your interpretation of the archival finding. And it's only when you hold in the, the document, or you find the sample or the photograph, that you know that like what you're about to be is going to be impressed in the sands of time too. And it's very rewarding. And I'm glad you asked me about that, because this is something
I've
I
got
can't
two
always.
more questions about communion. That's why
Okay.
that's why I'm so transfixed, because it's like it's so dope that you're like effortlessly kind of coming into these ideas that I'm already kind of like getting through your work. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm finishing a PhD right now, and so I've been in archives,
Ooh,
and I know that the lovely smell, like when you first go in there,
the
and these
gloves,
feelings.
even if you have to
Yes,
wear gloves. I have to tell you something, Keely. I'm gonna send you. So I made a video. I'm in process. I'll definitely have to talk with you about this. I'm gonna let you know.
yeah,
I So there's a video that I'm making for Waiting for the World with
hmm,
an incredible Black digital technologist.
yes,
And yes, they are really extraordinary. and they're non-binary person that I met. We're both mentors for Lower East Side Girls Club, and we met. And so there's a there's a vignette before the digital technology comes in where the character approaches a vessel. I won't give away because I want to share it with you later
Hmm.
when you can see it, but I put on a glove before I go.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
It's
telling
like
you, man.
the nerds will know
I
about
was
the
just
glove.
finna say, man, it's just it's so
And I'm
like you
like,
said, it's
nobody
a
else is gonna.
portal.
Yeah, you kind of do this stuff that's referential, and you know that somebody's like, oh, she's probably putting on the glove. I just enjoy. I mean,
I already know. Theo,
yes,
my boy Theo, say Theo knows too, man. Like those archives, man. So, and this will be in lock and step with where you were, right? I think you'll appreciate this, right? So, Zora's Moon. Um, that song is like a whole vibe, right?
thank
And
you.
so, and I've been listening to it all day, like I said, to kind of create my mood. Um, and I was listening to another live you did, and I can't remember who it was, who you were with. It might have been when you were with Cree, but you were talking about how you create these discourses around your songs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and in Zora's Moon, I feel like you're doing that via like access points that literature allows, right?
Hmm.
Via these access points that literature allows. And what I want to know is what was it like seeking out that living communion with Zora, with Black girlhood and song?
I'm telling you, it's just the archives just keep saving me. The ancestors keep like taking me out of sense of despair sometimes because I get so frustrated. I realized I had another realization. All these things kind of sometimes. I think it's because I'm such a like I like to go and I have a big appetite to learn. And I'll be like, yes, this project is this is my like this is I'm so like I'm all in it. And then I like look to my left and right and it's like people is like, woo! Like nobody knows like okay, I have to bring the people along, but so sometimes you just have to go it alone. And I realized that right before I started writing Zora's Moon. I had done this show that I love. I love the show. The show sold out. The show got a great review. It said it was a knockout. The show that I did about at at Bard University, and the presenter was this jazz presenter or was this jazz presenter, is about how Black music came to Paris. And I did
Hmm.
the show in some songs in French and some songs in English. Some songs jazz, some songs there at the time when jazz came to France, um, a lot of French composers were writing classical works by day and in the cabaret by night. So they started sort of integrating rags and cakewalks and different themes into the classical works. And so now you can trace it. So I wanted a show that traced it and then I would kind of contextualize it in between. And I think that this was more political than what the presenter had intended. And
Hmm.
so he told me that he felt that I wasn't French enough to be presenting the material. And he hired instead a white French woman to take my show and they took it to MoMA, which is an opportunity I would have loved.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I was so upset about it. And I was so angry. And then I realized that this person just has a different agenda than I. And I went into And once I realized that, I was like, go deeper into your agenda, girl. Like, okay, we know what he's now showed his behind. So go forget that one presenter. Let's double down on what it is you wanted. What were you trying to get at? So I guess Harlem Renaissance. I'm like, stay in the period, go further in. So I start listening to interviews of writers. I start reading biographies. I reread autobiographies of Hurston, who I always loved since I read Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Hmm.
And I came to an interview from 1943 with Mary Margaret McBride, who was one of the preeminent lesbian hosts, national host, had a radio show where she actually welcomed Hughes and County Cullen and other artists, black artists, at a time when that was not really, uh, mainstream. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so they had this great conversation when I'm listening to this clip, and she gets to the story that she writes about in Dust Tracks on the Road, where she says, tell that story, that wonderful story about you wrote about when you were a child and you thought the moon was following you. What was that? And so then Zora says, you know, I used to think that the moon was following me,
Hmm.
that I would, whatever tail way I ran, the moon would follow me just like a puppy dog. And then Mary says, and it was your cousins who disillusioned you, right? And she said, yes, making claims on the moon when I just thought that I was very special and I had it set up so that the moon would follow me. Um, and then, she said, and they sort of disillusioned me uh, because uh, I couldn't see how it could go with them and go with me when I'm going my way.
Yeah, yeah.
Duh, I was like, okay, okay,
Yes.
I am going my way. And then I thought, okay, and I took like 2 years to write the song. I walked around. I'm a analog person. Like I walk around with papers. I have a lot of paper books, like your shelf there. I love a paper
Hmm.
book. So I walked around with the sort of written transcript, handwritten transcript, trying to find what is the melody of that. And like, of course, because it's Zora, and I love Zora, I wanted it to be like a sonic monument. And I know, and I was at that time so angry about like how culture is appropriated and how unfair business can be, and thinking a lot about the injustice in how she died and how her papers were set fire to and then
Yeah.
extinguished by a passing by. And I have to tell you the end of this story. I know I'm stretching out, but so it was her papers, everyone, Zora's papers were set fire by the city where she passed away because she didn't have any heirs and people
Hmm.
attending to her papers. And it was a patrolman who was friendly with her, who saw smoke coming from her house and came and put out the fire. And I now, because we're on talking, I don't want to forget her name. Oh, thank God, the names are coming to me. So Cheryl Wall, Dr. Cheryl Wall,
Hmm.
is an amazing writer. Everyone should check out and think about Dr. Cheryl Wall, Wall, tonight, please. Um, I
I
always
think
wanted
I
to
got
meet
her.
Doc. I always wanted to meet Dr. Cheryl Wall, and I got pregnant with my son Marcus in 2019, and I was going to go. I live in Harlem, and Dr. Wall was going to speak at a black bookstore, and I was going to go, and I didn't feel so well. And now, flash forward to now, and I was going to thank her for her scholarship because it helped me to write the song. And we
Yeah.
lost her to COVID. We
Oh,
lost
man.
Dr. Wall to COVID, and yeah, and so um, okay, so I hear this and I stay with it, and eventually I find the melody to Zora's Moon, and um, I'm just so glad that I can tell that story, and I feel like the story is for every black girl, and just to contemplate and flesh out in your mind like this baby young Zora who didn't have an easy childhood and the rest of her life had its challenges too. Just believing the moon was following her. And I thought we're running under the same moon. And, you know, I just think there was something enchanting and capacious about the whole story that felt like her to me. And I thought if I can make a like a sonic monument to her voice, and not change the colloquial tone and the syntax and the same way that Zora captured the
I
way
was just
we
thinking that.
speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I kept it in, and also embed the actual sample of her voice. I meet so many folks, even as I reach out, because I've been like, because my work is so interdisciplinary, I reach out to and I'm indie, so I do everything for my own work, like my own PR and da da da. And I reach out to different outlets, and some people don't even know who Zora Neale Hurston is. I know that
Yeah.
doesn't surprise anybody here because a lot of us
Yeah.
are educators. We know. So I just wanted it, and then the last thing I'll say, Akili, is the day I put out the song, the day after my mom hands me the Sun Sentinel because I'm in Florida that's where I'm staying for the moment with my family. And the patrolman himself, I believe he was the first black police chief in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
In Eatonville, I think. I'll double check. He passed away from COVID the day after I.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so it's just the day after I released the song,
Yeah.
and I just thought like everything we're doing, it really matters. I know there's so much noise. Everything we're doing is a thank you, and it matters. It really matters. It really made me and even that my mom is so she's not I'm the only musician in my family, but she came through with that clipping like zzz, and put it
Yeah.
right under my nose. Like we all sort of know why we're doing this. And I think
Yeah.
even in a PhD program, you could be like the first person in your family to have a PhD, perhaps. You could be like some for if I had one, I would be the first in my family. And you'd have
Mm-hmm.
times when you think nobody understands you. And thankfully we have these writers who write about alienation and like I studied with Cornel West when I was in college, and he was the first one to talk about nihilism and alienation for me in my life, for me to understand like it's like this is part of the art of walk, is that there are times when you feel um, a certain sense of isolation, and like
Yeah.
you have to understand that there's something, it's a lens that you're going to make something useful with. But that's a lot about Zora's Moon.
It's
And I
just
released it on Black Women's Equal Pay Day because I wanted to talk about that. So I put it out on August 13th. And that was like everywhere I talked about the song, I was like, today is Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Do you know what that is?
yeah. Yeah.
So I just kind of like set it up how I want it to be, how I know that I might not be like on OK Player or whatever. But I know that whoever I talk to is going to hear what I have to say on that day.
Yeah.
So
I used to well let me say this before I forget it. Okay. So the first thing I'll say is, have you seen this? Zora and Langston.
yes, I have to read it. I haven't read it yet.
Yes.
I read some excerpts. I
I've
have to read it
started
though.
like working my way through it. And when you said everything that we do matters, everything that we do is like a thank you, this is kind of chronicling the way that they were going around and doing this
Mm-hmm.
archivist work. And
Exactly.
and for them to burn her papers. You know what I'm saying? Someone that was like doing this work for her people in inside of a people whose work has to be collected like that because so much of it is oral, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for her papers to like be burned, is just like the ultimate, like the ultimate slap in the face. And I think that what you were saying about so I'm gonna go like this, right? So what you were kind of saying about like being in a PhD program or being in any kind of graduate program, and I know you probably felt some of this as because you're from like Boca Raton, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to
Mm-hmm.
Harvard, right?
So
And
predominantly
so
white environments the whole
yeah,
time, except for my home life. Right.
yeah, and so I know you were kind of having those experiences, and it's so it gets difficult sometimes to have those conversations when you go back home about the difficulties you're experiencing, because sometimes that language, the language you're using and the language to explain what's going on with you kind of gets lost in
Right.
translation. And so I say all this to say it's like there's this cyclic um like design to like this
Mm.
work you do when you have to like be in that space for your people in order to
Right.
create what you're
Right.
doing, right? Which is kind of
Yeah.
what Cornel West was speaking to. And And then, like you said, you have to be okay with this reality that you might not be on OK Player when that should be. And this is no shade, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying because I wrote in that space when I had my hip hop website. I wrote in that space, and I know how that blogosphere should be so free, but it can be so constricting, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And it's just like you said, that this communion that kind of goes into that is it's just a beautiful process, but it can be a struggle.
You know what though, Achille? I have to say, at the same time, I've done way better, and which is why we're having you and I are both, and all of us here, everyone in this room is like kind of an analog book person,
Hmm.
but we're also using these digital tools. So even though there's some, like I said, there's something that may not be virally recognizable or familiar in the work, I I like our ancestors Langston and Zora. I am interested in um where we are right now and like being transparent and accessible. Um, so I am finding then there's some places that claim me right away, that are
Yeah, yeah,
more
yeah,
like
yeah.
mainstream or black commercial, what have you, however you'd say it, or stylized and not like academic. And so I've leaned into that where it's natural to me. um, if a designer shows me some clothes or reaches out and wants to do something, I'm down. Like this digital artist, like I really love the breadth of who we are as Black people, and I that is super like this is a perfect lead into why the songs sound like this, why I added my voice to Single Petal of a Rose, and why and that story I tell in the lyrics of Single Petal of a Rose is about my daughter and being a touring mom. And
Hmm.
I say, I came up with the lyrics when I was putting her to bed. So it's a bit of a lullaby about um, going on the road and coming back. And I thought this is the type of story I want to tell in this song in a very male dominant space. If I'm going to add lyrics, I want it to be speaking to something that I haven't heard that I would have liked to hear when I was younger. And likewise, the further evolution of me is like reflected in the sound of Waiting for the World, Tired, and Zora's Moon. I was very focused on the cookout, the
Hmm.
basement party. Like in these predominantly white environments, I always had these liberated spaces where I used to think the moon was following me too, actually. I should have said that. Like sitting in the back of my parents' car, driving from our house. We lived on Long Island, my grandparents live in Queens, and we would drive into the city and I would watch the moon and I thought it was following me. I used to just think that, or I would say it and nobody really answered me. The way when you're a
Hmm.
kid in the back seat, you say something at night, your parents are up in the front listening to the radio, they don't really hear what you're
Yeah.
saying. I know I said it and I know I thought it. And we would go to someone's house in Queens or sometimes on Long Island, and they would have a massive sound system. And by the time you're in the driveway, you can feel the bass in the pavement and the asphalt. And then you go in the house and be hugged and loved, and it smelled like food and spices. And then we go down the stairs, and the kids, everybody danced and everybody partied together. And or it might start earlier in the day and start with a cookout that turned into a basement party. And that was the way that my I saw the adults, the Black people who were adults in my life, feel at ease in their leisure. My grandparents playing dominoes with their friends.
Hmm.
Um, my grandfather listening to vinyls. He was a huge jazz fan, which is part of why I'm.
All the vinyls in
Do
here. I
you?
love. Oh
Oh,
yes, I
can you
might.
give us a
About to
vinyl
see. I was
event
just
one
gonna
day?
say. Yeah, I got. I've been thinking that. That's why I was glad. That we decided to do this. I've been thinking about like talking a little bit about that. Let me say this too, guys. My question box is doing something weird. So those questions that you had, could you just drop them in the chat and we'll get to them that way? Because I don't know what type of hate hating thing IG has going on today. But I saw there were like 3 questions, so if y'all could drop them in the chat, that way we can
Keely,
get
should
to
I
them.
try requesting to join, or is that weird?
Just leave that alone.
Leave it alone. Okay. Like,
I don't know what
yeah,
it's doing.
it's
But
crazy.
the so when I quit writing about hip hop, when I was I had
Why did
a
you do
I
that, please? I'm just
so
curious.
I
I love your
so
shirt. That's a crazy shirt. It's so good.
thank you.
Yes. What?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have a
So
womanist jazz shirt.
yeah,
Okay.
I felt really I couldn't reconcile how I was helping some people um push a certain kind of music that I didn't quite agree with.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
they would, they send us when you're in that when you're
That's how I
writing like
felt
about
about Porgy and Bess.
yeah,
I was
you
like,
know,
please, you know, the director isn't even black.
yeah. And so I'm putting, I was putting them on, and the people that I wanted to like get the shine, right, who were sending me the stuff, it just wouldn't work, and it didn't matter how I wrote about it. Like I was like trying my best to
Wow.
show what was in it. It didn't matter what I wrote about. That lane got the light, and I don't mind that, but I want balance in that genre. You know what I mean? So if
Yeah.
I'm giving you the same consistency in terms of what I'm writing, then you should be able to see. And what that was making me feel like, it was like they weren't even reading it anyway. And so I
Right.
decided, I was like, I'm gonna just shut it down. And I took a year off, and I didn't even,
Mm.
and in my anger, I didn't even listen to rap. I listened to jazz for a year,
Mm.
and it gave me my vinyl collection. It gave me space to
Mm-hmm.
like to fall back in love with reading. Like I like that this came out of that year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it gave me a lot of space to write. And so when I was doing some reconnaissance on you, I was thinking about how you were being informed sometimes, because I'm sure you probably get so many different access points, but sometimes from literature to music, and for me, it was that music to my poetry, you know? And I was like, what a cool um, back and forth that is influencing us. You know what I mean? Because
Oh yeah.
I might put on a Love Supreme, right? To like bang out like 4 poems. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because there's this, and I was thinking about Coltrane a lot, more so Coltrane in his later years when he was really
Mm-hmm.
doing all that experimenting and nobody was really rocking with it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was thinking about what you are doing with it's escaping me, but the song we're here to talk about, waiting,
Waiting
what
for the
is
world, tired.
waiting for the world
Oh
tired,
my
right?
goodness, you just
You
really, that's a beautiful compliment. You just layered it there.
yeah, you are playing with some stuff there, and you mentioned this earlier, right? Like black futurism. Um and I mean, he was doing it, Nina was doing it too in her later years, but playing with this communion with sound and voice acting as an instrument in the background too. It's and when you said, I want you to cook on this, right? But when you said that you were like really leaning into the cookout and the dominoes and
Absolutely.
all of these things that play background sometimes to experience, that's what I hear with,
Right.
with what you're doing with that song. You know what I'm saying? And I'm telling y'all, hit that link and listen to it. There is so much, and you have to. It's beautiful too, because the things you're doing, like Kiyose said earlier, how you're playing with, sound, genre, discourse, etc. It's just so fun, you know. But I'm gonna
Thank
let you
you.
cook a little bit on that. Like, what is the experience like using that poem by Langston to inform what you create? And y'all get off me about reconnaissance, man.
I'm
Okay, they
so,
in the com-
oh, because
they were tired.
I
They
missed, I
said he
didn't see it.
loves
I'm looking,
reconnaissance.
looking.
The word of the week. Yeah,
Oh,
but
I think that I have, well, okay, I agree with you. I think that sometimes we find things by rejecting what doesn't fit. And the same way you had to reject that that paradigm, not never having to do with the love that you had. It was this thing being forced on you, like a way of doing it.
Hmm.
And reject that, go through a bit of heartbreak about how that about what your expectation was, and then realize that you know you are your best thing, as it says in Beloved,
Hmm.
and just like go back deeper into you. And that's a poem that is just, ever since I read it, I had, so my history with Langston is special to me. He's so real, like so real to me. So that poem I first found in college in my paperback anthology of Langston Hughes poems, collected
Hmm.
Langston Hughes poems. So like light pinkish, thick edition that's still in print, which was stolen by my blockmate. I'm not going to say her name, but I
Yeah, I mean,
remember. But the thing about it is, she's an African American studies professor and like an
yeah.
awarded African American studies professor. So I'm not mad, but I was tight at the time. But she wanted to hold it. But I loved that book so much that it was like mm, a work of art in my home. It was really a fixture in a dorm room
Hmm.
for me. I always knew where that book was. So much so, so close to me, usually on my bed or something, that she saw it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Amid a lot of textbooks, and I had bought it for fun too. So I had a special history with his poetry, and then later for school and settling into my family, we moved to Harlem, and his historic home was open because of the great writer Renee Watson, who a lot of you
Mm.
know. She's an amazing YA writer and just like incredible writer. Period. And she has a new book called A Love Revolution that I just ordered. So she and Kendall Walker, who's a curator, she they took custody of the house somehow, and they opened it under the auspices of I2 Arts Collective for artists to come and use the house. It was open to the public because Kendall lived on site and maintained the
Yeah.
house. Lived on the second floor where the private quarters were, and kept. Have you ever been to the house?
I was just thinking, I in my head, I was thinking two things. I wonder is it still open? And this reminds me of the opening of Begin Again by Eddie Glaude. And he's talking about how Baldwin's home is like, I think was being destroyed, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
for
I was
sale
like,
or so.
yeah, I was like, man, I hope this one's still there. That would be something super cool to kind of be able to come and enjoy.
So presently, it's closed because of financials, you know,
Mm,
and it happened during the pandemic. But the house is intact, and before those two great women were able to do that for the community and the world, like it was owned by someone. So perhaps there'll be another opportunity for it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
with this pandemic, it closed to the public. But they more importantly, they had a mission of maintaining the house as a place and resource and a space for the community. So there was a lot of children's programming. There were writing workshops for children and youth, poetry slams, um, and I was, my family was at these things, and I would come by myself and read there. Um, and eventually, Charlie Parker Jazz Festival decided to use it as a site in 2019 for a concert, and I performed that song, "Waiting for the World." I was the selected artist. That was my Charlie Parker Jazz debut. Was in his living room on
Oh
a
man.
thunderous night, and I went crazy. Um, I was so oh ecstatic. I got electric tea lights to put everywhere. I just wanted it to feel So it was like a sacred space to me, and I
Mm-hmm.
decked it out like a church. I brought an orchid. I bought two orchids, and I just wanted it to be. I wanted to be so. I was so grateful, and everything about it. Charlie Parker. I knew that Langston Hughes would like having us in the living room playing
Mm-hmm.
music. My colleague Joel Ross is a vibraphonist. You would love his album. It's beautiful. He put out two since last year. Joel Ross. So Joel and I played duo vibraphone and voice, which is a very
Is he
unusual
on
combination.
one of your songs?
Yes, he's on Zora's
I was just
Room.
gonna say, okay, okay, yeah, yeah,
He's my
yeah.
featured artist
I
on
knew
Zora's
I
Room.
saw it. Yeah,
He's a favorite.
reconnaissance,
Yes.
reconnaissance.
And also like yeah, you would love he's just fantastic. You would love everything about his music. He's a
Yeah.
beautiful spirit. Um in so yeah, vibraphone and voice is really hard too because he had to do the chordal work and the it was a lot of work because
Mm-hmm.
usually you have a chordal instrument with the voice too. So he was working really hard, and sometimes he played on Langston Hughes's piano, which was restored
Yeah.
for the concert.
Oh man.
So I
I
mean to
know y'all
say,
tell me y'all took pictures while y'all were like
we
doing.
did,
All
we
right, all
did,
right,
and you
all
know
right.
what? I used the fee was like modest. It's
hmm
Charlie Parker. Well, no, there are larger artists who have bigger fees, but my fee was modest. I'll speak for myself. So I
hmm
used it to record it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I took a sacrifice on. I didn't get paid for that concert. Between
yeah.
the tea lights and the orchids and the I got an engineer to
Mm,
I felt the same way as you because I was that was my Pompeii. That's my whatever. I that's my ruins that I want to be. And
yeah.
in the upstairs is the above ground tub. In his office, there are papers behind the carpets that are peeling back, and it's just it's just the garden where he's photographed famously with children. It's there. It's well kept, and so I don't know if I answered the question, but I just want to say I think that the poem from 1930 has stayed with me. So how could I not stay with it? And that's, of course, the poem itself is perfect. The poem is. Do you want to say it or should I?
I was gonna say I got it right here if you want. So, how about you
Please
say
say it.
it?
You want me to
You
say
want me?
it?
Yeah, you say it. You
I'll
say
say
it.
the, let's say it together. I'll say the first part. I'll say the first part and you finish it.
Let me make sure. Hold on. Let me make sure I got it. Hold on.
I
Hold
know,
on.
you
Hold on.
take your time and don't feel rushed because we're making this up, but this is fun too.
Because I had. Okay, maybe this is. Let me make sure.
You make sure and I'll tell them about it. So, poem was written in 1930
Because I don't want it to
and
be.
it's a very
Okay.
compact
Yeah, I
poem
got it. I got it. Yeah, I
and
got it.
I was attracted immediately to the statement and the imagery within this very terse poem. Tired. I am so tired, aren't you, of waiting for the world to become good and beautiful and kind.
Let us take a knife and cut the world in two and see what worms are eating at the rind.
And I was talking with someone. I should just let it sit for a second. Yeah. So that poem just like embedded in me. It's so short, it's so easy to remember. It's really truly for anybody. It's almost like as short as an ad, a jingle.
Yeah.
And I think it
Like.
was meant, yeah, and it was meant to it speaks to everyone and the top line, aren't you? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a call and response and uh many folks will hear good and beautiful and kind and think that there's a romance to it or a sentimentality. And then he writes, let us take a knife, and I think I picture like two people cutting a wedding
Yeah.
cake. The way it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
communal, let us. And it's almost church like or preaching, like, let us. take a knife and then, oh, where are we going now? And
Hmm.
cut the world in two and see what worms are eating at the rind. Let us not be obsessed with reconciliation before we get to the accountability, till we get to the fact finding. And so, of course, I want that. And it's something that we have to bear, and we bear that proposition. We bear that as Black people. We bear that silently everywhere we go. And I want it to be a groove.
Yeah,
I don't want
yeah.
us to feel it shouldn't be a heavy lift. I've
Hmm.
sung Langston Hughes poems, and being in New York and seeing so much performance art, it's often done in this like very lacy, doily Harlem Renaissance, like to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, no, I think that he would like the funk. I think he likes the grease. I think he likes we all like a plethora of things. And I think he would love for me to take this off of the dusty shelf. Um, I've sung like as a classical soprano, I've sung, let us take a knife. That type of
Hmm.
I want the bass line, I want the backbeat, I want the effects, I want it to
Yeah.
sound like I'm very influenced by Tribe Called Quest. I'm very
Yes.
influenced um, by I think a lot of 90s soul. Um, I think that uh, those 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 colors and like image painting, that sampling and effects and electronic sounds, Herbie Hancock, uh,
Yes.
Miles Davis, those electronic sounds are very like they're impressed on me. So that's why oopsie. That's why that's that's why I picked that, and I wanted it to be like that.
That's the one. Yeah. Headhunters. Is what when you said that popped right in my mind. I think I got it over there, but there's one that I wanted that and it might be Future Shock that I just recently saw while I was vinyl shopping and I passed on it. And I was like, I was just thinking, here go a sign, you go back and get that vinyl. But man, what you said about wanting it to be a groove and the connections of I wrote it down up here. I got to ask you that. I'll make that my last question. Um, but I can't find where it's at, but I know what I wanted to talk about. The Afrofuturism, the Black futurism that is kind of at work in this piece, um, in terms of sound. Really like lay that groove. You know what I mean? Like lay that groove and kind of drive it home for me. And so when I was reading the poem earlier, on my planning period, I was like, how is this juxtaposition like working? Because like you said, the whole let us grab a knife, right? But it's working. It's working, sister.
Right.
It's working.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Let us
Telling
take a
you.
knife. That's so, that's that's what I needed to hear. It's always
Mhm.
what I need to hear. It's
Yeah.
always what I need to hear, and that's why I think why Casey Benjamin produced it, and I think he did a great job, and he's uh he's a
Is that who
friend of
worked
mine.
with Glasper?
Yeah, he's in the
Yeah, okay.
in the Robert Glasper experiment,
Yeah.
and yeah, he understood, and a lot of my references, musical references, he shares too. And Stevie Wonder is a huge reference. Roberta Flack, Minnie Riperton,
Hmm.
and over the last 3 years, I've recorded uh, the whole album. So the album is mastered, and the album got mastered by about February of 2020. And I had thought that I'd be putting it out in 2020, but I'll be putting out the whole album.
I can't wait.
Thank you.
I
I'll
can't
be
wait.
putting
I
out the
was
whole album this year. I'm indie, so it's my own. plan how I'm going to do it, and
Hmm.
that's my aspiration, and I'm planning to put it out this year. And I'm learning a lot, and I just want to tell you like how grateful I am that you I can't even tell y'all, like Akili just said yes. Like he listens, I'm sure he listened to the music because I'm in this community, so I know that he's not like just, he's very mindful, literally gonna read or check out whatever. He's not gonna just reply. Uh, but I just am glad because, he just took a leap to
Yeah.
meet somebody new, and it means the world to me. I've had a wonderful, I've been doing this kind of on a regular basis as I release the single with other incredibly gifted folks in the Black Bookstagram community that I'm in also. And it's been wonderful. I recommend to each of us who's here to try to do this, like do some conversation with other Black Bookstagrammers, because it's just so powerful to get to meet us this way. Like we like each other's captions, but this is just, I'm like
Yeah.
very, very happy.
Yeah, man, I appreciate all the love. And I mean, I appreciate you, reaching out, like, and it's great because like I remember watching you on Cree's thing. And I was like, who's this professor that Cree's got on? You know what I mean? And I was doing my
Thank
thing because I
you.
always mess with Cree.
That's
I always
kind.
mess with Cree, and you
Cree's so
know,
cool. Oh my goodness.
yeah, yeah, that's my dog, man. And I
I know,
didn't
she's
have
wonderful.
the time right then to see who you were, like truthfully. You know what I mean?
I
So I
know,
was
because of
like,
the pace
I'm
of
gonna
all
double
this stuff.
back. I'm gonna double back and I'm gonna see who this professor was. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all were talking about like intersectionality,
Yes.
um, and you were talking a little bit about the dust on the track, that
Yeah.
Zora.
Dust tracks on
Um,
a road.
yeah, yeah, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to find out a little bit more. And you like reached out, and I was like, universe, and like you said, I think I hit you back, and I said this is usually something that I kind of say when I'm okay with something. I say, of course, I'm always down with any righteous endeavor. It was probably something along those lines,
Yeah.
of
Very
getting,
affirming. Very
yeah.
affirming. Not nothing, no like, okay. It was very
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
like to infinity and beyond. Let's go. It
Let's
was
do,
great.
yeah.
It was no halfway. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
great. I'd say this is like, if that's something that I can deposit, into everybody's week. We're midweek, and we appreciate you spending this time with us, because your time is very precious. And I know y'all could be just watching something relaxing, and you're fully engaged. We can feel it. I don't know. I can feel the energy, and I'm grateful. And I'd say I hope that this has been an encouragement, because it's cool. I talked with Akili, and he really came to some important crossroads. He kind of hit every like artistic crossroad that I've had, and I have to start every story that you ask me about is like, well, I was in crisis, like I was totally about to give up, and then like, I was on the side of the road. I mean, but I hope that's an encouragement, because I found, because of what the things that we love are never going to fail us or leave us. I can't say that to other people in other lives, but this room right here,
Yeah.
the stuff that we love is the sustaining stuff. So if you are, so what I would say, the like uh, addendum to when I put out on a turquoise cloud, the jazz police is what we like. People, jazz
Oh, okay, there you go.
police. It froze, right? Sorry.
Hmm.
Yeah, it means like, anyway, some folks didn't understand it because it's kind of like sounds a little classical and a little jazz. And I had to think, I saw Erica Badu and Questlove do music at Google, and I
Hmm.
love them both. I love Badu. Oh, Badu. I mean, I love
Yeah.
vocalists, and I love artists. So Badu. Anyway, I watched, and Questlove too, amazing. So, and I thought, gee, they in this space, this Google music at Google, they're just talking, they're doing music, but they're chilling and they're like expansive and they're riffing and it feels like they're satisfied with the space. And so then I wrote to music at Google for 9 months, back and forth emails, and I eventually got a music at Google and I
Mm-hmm.
did it. And I talked all about the things I wanted to show, and I had my slides, and I showed Kay Davis and Ellington, and I showed the manuscripts, and I showed the digital files, and I talked about black data and the importance of recovering it and using it, and not just. And I talked about this white jazz scholar who hung up on me pretty much when I said I wanted to talk with him about Ellington, because he said all those songs that you want to do have been digitally remastered, the Ellington versions. So this is
Mm-hmm.
you didn't find anything new.
Mm.
And he kind of like, so I have to go. And I was so angry because I knew, and this is where our roads parted because he has a different agenda than I. I said, if there's not people in my generation taking up this thing, this is what's in front of me. If there's not people in our generation who are loving on the work, then the shit is
Mm-hmm.
not being done. It's not
Yeah.
being done the way it needs to be done. This is a music to be reenacted, embodied in the present, filled with our spirits, our young spirits, and then every child that we teach, our own kids. My daughter should be singing the songs too. This is it doesn't help anyone on a shelf digitally remastered. I mean, it helps to an extent. It's a piece in a larger picture, which is a fulsome and embodied practice. And so I left that gentleman on the side of the road and I kept going. So I
Mm-hmm.
hope everybody keeps going, knowing what you know about why you're supposed to be doing it. So after music at Google went well, Ted called me
Yeah. I
three
saw
months
that you did the
later
thing with Ted. Yeah.
3 months later, they emailed me, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't even think it was for February.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
that's fun. Like it was October.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
and so I realized that maybe I'm more like a thought leader or an innovator rather than a vocalist to some people. And sometimes with a different twist, you get to do your thing. So
Yeah.
like continue to do your thing the way you believe it to be, and continue to seek out people like Akili who will feel you where you're at. And know, see, all of us in this room, like any one of these people, I think you could probably reach out and just keep making your way down, making your journey. So that's what I had to say. I had to
I'll tell you
let
some
people
cool
know.
things. I'm stealing this notion of "that's my Pompeii." I'm going to use that in a poem.
Oh,
Um, when you were just talking about how these things have to live now in the present, and we give it our youthful spirit,
yes,
and then our kids should be singing it too. I was just
yes,
thinking that's literally an allusion to how the moon was following Zora, and then you used to think that the moon was following you, and then our
yes.
kids should be able to think the same thing. And I was like, yeah, I got to make all this a poem. I was just, that's
And
just
there's a
what.
choir of people with fancy titles. The person who hung up on me was awarded one of the NEA Jazz Master designations in 2020. Do not, there's a discrepancy between, and there's a disconnect. People will be very well rewarded for saying no to some of our ideas. It's
Hmm.
and it goes on in parallel though. You still do what you want to, what you're pursuing, just stay there. And his ministry is different than mine. That's the only thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's
Okay.
helpful to say, because sometimes you feel so alone in it, right? I know you do. A PhD is like a long journey.
I was telling one of my students today, look, it's not half as much about being intellectually sound as it is about perseverance. You know what I'm saying? I was like, like people, they'll say, you're so well read, surely you're, so smart, etc. And
Surely
I'm
it's
like,
easy or something. No.
yeah, or you have time. That one gets me. I'm just like,
Yes, but yeah, exactly. Like people want to be frustrated for hours, empty hours. Like yeah, like people say, "Oh, you have a fun job," but what you have also, you have perseverance and joy.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
actually
yeah,
ended up, I have a newsletter if people like newsletters, and I ended up signing. I'm like you, I kind of start writing and discover, or I hear something and I realize I'm going to write
yeah.
it. But as I got to the bottom of the letter, I like writing my newsletters. Um, I said something like, let joy feed your persistence. And you just said persistence. So the way
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about it like a week ago, because, putting out songs in the pandemic is like interesting, but
I bet.
I would be, yeah, I just had to learn a lot of things. But that's the joy that you have comes through the in in, intersected with the persistence. You're joyful in your pursuit. So then there's abundance on the side
Yeah,
of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So let me see what we got. You got time for one more, and then we'll.
Achille, I definitely have time. I'm not in a rush. I appreciate you, and I end up
Okay.
talking a lot. So
All right. So I'll let this one be our last one because it's a really
okay,
cool thing that you did. So the other day you created the coolest post with Diane Carroll.
I
In
did. That's good.
conversation.
I like
Uh-huh.
that post.
Talking.
I like that clip.
Uh-huh.
Right, it's a good
Uh-huh.
clip.
Yeah. Talking, and she's asked about blackness being a problem for black performers. To which she responds, she says, being black is not a problem for a black person. Being black is a problem for the community that doesn't understand that you're a human being. She said that it wasn't a problem for her, it was a problem with the other people, right, that exist in that community. If I asked you this now in a different way, so if I asked you, in what way is blackness problematic for the powers that be, and how do you withstand that in your quest to create? What would you say?
How is blackness a problem for the powers that be, and how do I
Hmm.
withstand that?
How do you withstand it being, yeah, being a problem for them?
Well, I'm gonna start with how I withstand it, and then I'll get
Hmm.
to the powers that be. No, I'll start with the powers that be. I
Okay.
mean, I think that the course of my life and everything I've ever studied before me, uh, that I keep near me. And I was actually, my daughter is, she's doing something, she's in fourth grade and they're doing a resume, a Black History resume. I think it's to make it not as cumbersome as writing a full research paper, but it forces the children to do all the research and it's quite wonderful exercise. So she picked Billie Holiday. So
Mm.
today she did a lot of the fun part and then she decided to sit at the yes holiday. So Billie Holiday is the artist who wrote the very first popular, nationally popular protest song, Strange Fruit, a
Mm.
song about lynching. And so I had a conversation with my 9 year old about lynching, and we're in Florida, and it was a particularly atrocious, inconceivably atrocious lynching that was became a national story. And a year later, a Jewish composer wrote Strange Fruit and collaborated with Billie Holiday. And then Billie Holiday, in the practice of her performance, insisted that every place she performed, she had to be permitted to sing the song, no matter where in the
Hmm.
country she was. So she made a statement with her livelihood, put her whole livelihood on the line to make this political statement. And so I talked with my daughter about all of that. Yes, I was admiring that. Is that the Farrah
Yeah,
Griffin?
we're gonna break this down Sunday.
Is that the Farrah Griffin one?
This is the it's Billie Holiday with William
Oh
Duffy.
no. Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay. No, I don't
Yeah,
know that one.
and we're gonna
Is
me and my brother Reggie, we're gonna break this one down Sunday.
I'll be there. I'll
So
be
pull
locked
up.
in. I
Hmm.
will. Ooh, Sunday I could still get the book. So I'll get the book. Thank you,
Yep.
thank you, thank you. That's great. I'll be there. So so it's always been, and I always, it's always present, and there's a range of, um, you know, uh, I guess, fears and anxieties that are, and injustices, and we see them at play. It seems almost relentless,
Mm-hmm.
as Black people, and that's why, there's the famous James Baldwin quote: "To be a Black person in America is to feel in a rage all the time." So we, I enjoyed talking with my child about this, actually, because at the same time I keep very present. And a sister reminded me of this the other day as we were talking about Zora, but I reminded my own daughter about this today. We talked about the FBI and how they targeted Billie Holiday as she tried to be an activist. And I said, well, while you're writing your report, make sure to make just as present in the story
Mm-hmm.
that there were many Black women and Black people in general who supported Billie Holiday and lifted her up and loved on her. And I said, and that's part of the story too. So as far as how I persist, I am always in communion with uh, Black people who love me and who I love. And I never let anything get in between that, as far as my anger, rage, and, despair sometimes, uh,
Mm-hmm.
about those dehumanizing, forces and
Yeah.
people, and how I don't understand it. Um, but I come from a place that I bring with me, and I try to look at things through that, and that's why I have hope, and that's why I know that what I'm doing is in support of someone that I love, even if I haven't met them. So I'm always like on the side of love, and always on the side of of peace and justice, and I know that that means something.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. I thank you for reaching out. I feel like, that was a dual reach out. You were reaching
Yes,
out and I
we did a
reached
high
right back.
five.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we're gonna do this, right? So man, thank you, Candice. Like I said, I'm gonna rewatch this and I'm gonna steal some more
Really?
things, for my poetry that I'm working on. And you let me know as soon as the project drops. And then let me know when you got the vinyl ready.
Oh, thank you.
Hmm.
I definitely will. And if anybody wants to support me or other jazz artists, I've been adding this in anything I say. Please follow me on Spotify. And I've had folks ask me, does that make sense? Because artists don't get a lot of revenue. But I could tell you that Zora's Moon, and I've enjoyed this, Zora's Moon is most popular in Japan.
Mm.
And someone asked me, does that mean that you think that maybe that your folks are not like, I know it doesn't mean that folks aren't listening. Black people are definitely loving the song, and I they're showing me love. It just means that every time people follow me on Spotify and listen there, it feeds it to someone else that I've never met. Like,
Yeah.
the reason I like the fact that it's doing so well in Japan is I never performed in Japan before.
Hmm.
And that's the type of like boundless reach that I want our culture to have. I love that it's like it there's a dimension of uh I guess like transcendence that I like, even though I don't make money off of Spotify.
Yeah.
I want it out far. I want it farther than I can reach with my physical body until I will tour in Japan. I love traveling. But if the music can get there before I do, and Zora gets there before I do, and I'm telling you, I ended up, a Japanese newspaper in December interviewed me. And so I got to, they're in the Japanese newspaper is Zora's Moon, and I got to talk to this journalist who had not read Zora Neale Hurston, and like so think of it as if you do follow and kind of share jazz music, don't think that it's in the same vein as like Taylor Swift commercially. It's for another reason. It just, if you believe that the digital space is a place that actually impacts us, then you just kind of send it further in.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
Yeah.
share that.
I think that looks like the homies are gonna be following you
Thanks.
shortly, and I'm finna go do it right now. Okay.
Thanks,
Okay.
y'all.
Well, look,
Appreciate it.
send me that stuff you were saying you was gonna send me too.
Oh, the video?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
will.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
will. I will.
All
I will.
right. Well,
Thank you
talk
so much,
soon.
Akili. Yeah,
You
yeah.
you
Thank you,
are welcome.
everybody. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Good night.